I'm also gonna have Cesar here. He's on his way. He said he's gonna be a couple minutes late. So as soon as I'm gonna put him in the chat as being here because he's already on his way. So that's an
Okay.
attendance.
Thank
Is
you.
interpretation open so I can leave it open right now? Oh yeah, it's open.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody said, let me give you, you have local recording permission. Otherwise I could do that now.
Let me look.
Let me see.
I don't think so because all it says for me is stop recording or pause recording.
It's a stop or pause. So that means it must. Are you and Rocio logged into the same account?
No.
No, and Diana, now that's popping up on my end too.
Ah. But it says, Rocio, it says you, I mean, it has that the little cloud thing with the dot in the middle by your name. That means that you can record.
So
And
let me stop recording and then see what that does, and then I can start it again.
Oh, I think, okay, that's what, because you're a co-host. Thank you. So Vanessa made you co-host, so you don't need special permission to record locally. You should just be able to start. So you should be able to, like, if you could try both of you to start the recording now.
I think because we're co-host, I think we would pause what you currently have right now.
So I paused it. Did that pause it for everyone or just
Yes.
on mine? Okay, then yeah, we're connected to the same one.
We can't be
didn't-
co-hosts.
Oh, we have to unco-host you?
Yes.
I
Oh
can
my
do
God.
that right now. So okay,
That's
I
so
just
weird.
did that.
Yep, now I can record on my computer. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
And you too, Rocio?
Oh, but I still need permission, it says here.
Okay, hold on. I could do that. Allow to record locally. Now you should. And, oh yeah, and Rocio, you do have permission because when I pull
I
it
have
down, it
permission,
says,
but this time it didn't ask me to record a local file. It just started the
Right.
recording. So
right,
I'm not
because
sure
if you're
that's-
not a co-host, the only thing you could do is record locally. So if you record, it will be local.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes
I feel like every single time, every month, they change this. As soon as we have it figured out, next month is different. So did somebody want the AI meeting notes? Otherwise, I'm gonna disable those. Okay, I'm gonna disable those.
I think we're okay without them. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, Diana.
Okay, those are disabled.
Awesome, thank you. And I see that it's 5 o'clock, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with today's meeting. First off, wanna thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. To ensure that folks are able to access this meeting, we're gonna start providing instructions on selecting your preferred language channel on Zoom. So we'll do that now. If you're a monolingual English speaker, we ask that you please select the world-like interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen, then select English. If you're using Zoom via a telephone or a tablet, you will select the 3 dots to see more options, followed by interpretation and then English. At this time, I'm going to pass the mic over to Lingüística so that they can review these instructions in Spanish.
Thank you, Vanessa. Buenas tardes a todos. El día de hoy tenemos disponible la función de interpretación para aquellas personas que lo requieran. Si se están conectando desde una computadora, en la parte de abajo del menú de Zoom van a ver un icono que parece un mundo que dice interpretación. Seleccionamos ese icono y luego seleccionamos español y silenciar el audio original para que puedan escuchar la interpretación del inglés al español. Y si se están conectando desde una tableta o desde un dispositivo móvil, sus opciones son algo diferentes. Tienen que tocar la pantalla, seleccionamos los 3 puntos, nuevamente interpretación de idiomas, seleccionamos español, silenciar el audio original y luego finalizado, terminado o listo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Before we continue, I'd like to make sure that we're all in the correct channel. If you're having any trouble navigating to the correct channel, please do let us know so we can help you through that. You can either raise your hand or you can also post in the chat to let us know that you're having some challenges connecting to the right channel. So I'm going to give it a moment to see if folks are having any trouble. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised and nothing's in the chat, so we're going to go ahead and continue. Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our February Shafter Community Steering Committee meeting. My name is Vanessa Gomez, and I will be facilitating today's meeting with my colleague, Dr. Diana McDonald. And we are joined today by Jessica Olson and Rocio Calderon from the Air District. And we would like to, well, I on behalf of the H&Co team would love to welcome back Jessica. It's been a while since you've been here with us, and we're so excited to have you here again. It's great to see you with us tonight. Before we kick off today's meeting, there are some housekeeping items that we'd like to review with you all. I know that these are very familiar, but we just want to make sure that everyone is aware of what those are. So really quickly, before we get started, we ask that you please mute yourself and make sure your full name and organization are showing as your screen name. To change your screen name, click on the top right side of your picture or video. CSC members use the naming convention CSC -first name, last name. If you're a resident, you can use the naming convention R-first name, last name. And for all other participants, you can use the naming convention first name, last name, -affiliation. And we'd like you to note that meeting hosts may update your screen name during this meeting. As you know, my colleague Diana and I are available to help with technical support and to keep track of the action items throughout this meeting. So if you're having any issues, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us so that we can help you out or we can answer any questions or comments that you might have. And on behalf of the H&Co team, I'd like to express how honored and humbled that we feel to facilitate with you in this space tonight. We're very excited to witness what we can all achieve together at these CSC meetings. And we'd like to assure you that we're here to support you with whatever you might need. And as always, we appreciate your ongoing commitment and your engagement in this process. It is because of you that your community will be able to develop and implement new strategies to monitor air quality and help reduce health impacts in Shafter. To help foster community participation during today's meeting, we will be facilitating the meeting with our group agreements, which you see in front of you as a guide. And we invite you to review the agreements and jump into the conversation. Agenda topics are a direct representation of the topics requested by CSC members. So if at any time you would like to add agenda items or maybe skip agenda items so that you can go over those agenda items at the next CSC meeting, we invite you to let us know and share ideas here or during our agenda setting meetings. As you can see in front of you, today's agenda topics are designed to provide updates on action items from last month's CSC meeting, share recent air monitoring findings, updates on CERT implementation, and several general updates. These meetings are designed to ensure that CSC members are engaged and part of the decision-making for implementation of AB617. We also have a specific place on the agenda for any public comment, which we have at the very end of the meeting. So if you're a public member, we invite you to raise your questions as you have them, and we'll make sure to include them as they fit in the agenda. At this time, I'd like to kick off our meeting with welcoming remarks from Jessica Olson.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you. I'm just so grateful to be back and definitely want to give a big thanks to folks on my team and on Harder's team and to all of you for all of the work you've accomplished in the time that I've been gone. And I just really appreciate being given the space to help take care of my newest family member. I've shown everyone, so I'm going to show all of you as well, of course, that this is Penelope, and this is her big sister, Eleanor. So this is why I was gone, but I'm also just grateful to be back and grateful to be here with all of you. I know you all have young ones and folks that you all care about, and that's why you're helping us do all of this great work to improve your community. So I'm just grateful to be here and grateful to see you all, and also grateful for some of the great updates we have today. Really looking forward to talking a lot about some recent air quality data we've been able to collect. And then also a lot of you, to Vanessa's point, in developing our agenda tonight, had lots of questions about high priority projects. So we're grateful to talk about that today. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Vanessa, and just thanks for all of your support as well.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So next up, we have the review action items tracker. To support a transparent process in the implementation of the CSC's recommendations, our team tracks action items during these meetings, and the Air District supports reporting and accountability. Today, Rocio will provide an overview of the most recent action items and their status. As Rocio provides updates, we invite you to ask for clarification if you need it. Our team will take note of any follow-up questions that are asked, and if they can't be answered tonight, we'll make sure to return your questions at a future meeting. Rocio, please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Vanessa. Good evening, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started with the action items. Okay, can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, awesome, thank you. So today we don't have any in-progress action items from the last meeting, so I'll go ahead and go on to the completed section. So starting with the first action item was for the Air District to share information on how to access the EV chargers. And so we encourage the CSC to visit the link here, that's the Plug-in Electric Vehicle Resources Center page, to learn more about the charging infrastructure. And this link provides lots of great information, including where the EV chargers are located. So moving on to the next completed action item, similar to this one, it was for folks to know how to access the EV charger sites. And so just wanted to clarify from the last CSC meeting that the chargers at the public fleet work site are for public fleets. And so later on in today's meeting, we'll talk more about installing more public chargers in Shafter. And then again, just for more information, if you want to click on this link, you can see the EV chargers that are located in Shafter. So for the next action item, in the last CSC meeting, Rocio Mesqueda from the city of Shafter shared a great presentation on the Dial-A-Ride program. And folks requested to receive hard copies of this presentation. So we did go ahead and just send those out. Moving on to the next action item, Rocio had also invited the CSC to attend the city council meeting related to the public transit needs. And so we went ahead and shared more details on this during the standing updates of January via email. And I know folks were also interested in knowing if this meeting was going to have interpretation services, which is right here in the next action item. And so we did go ahead and also just share more information on that. And they did, in fact, have interpretation services available during that meeting. So following on to the next action item, folks were interested in receiving a one-page summary for the Vegetative Barriers Program that shares more information on high level of like what it is and what folks who are interested need to do. And so we did go ahead and create that one-page fact sheet that highlights those key points. So we're happy to share that with you folks today at the end of the meeting if time permits. If it doesn't, we're more than happy to follow up with this during standing updates or in the following CSC meeting. And that's all for the completed action items. And then going back, and we do have one under comment noted. So this action item is for the Air District to connect with the city and Caltrans to see if part of the State Route 43 project, if vegetative barriers can be installed between the streets and sidewalks. And this location is just north of the Apple Market. And so the district is coordinating with the city of Shafter on this request. And that is the end of the action items. I'm happy to take any questions at this time if there's any. Don't see any hands raised or anything in the chat, so I can go ahead and pass it back to you, Diana. Thank you. Or Vanessa.
Thank you, Rocio. If you have any lingering questions, comments, or concerns about any of the action items that you just saw, please feel free to raise your hand, or you can also comment in the chat. In the meantime, we can transition to our air monitoring presentation. So as you know, the CAMP, or the Community Air Monitoring Plan, is an essential component of AB617. As a CSC, you all voted on the locations of each of the monitors. Today, we're going to be learning more about the current air monitoring findings. The goal for today is to provide a longer and more comprehensive informational update that will build on some of the content that you heard at the last CSC meeting, where there was a brief air monitoring update that was provided to everyone. As you all have shared in the past, air monitoring is an important tool that can be used to improve air quality in Shafter, specifically in areas that are disproportionately affected by polluted air. As the Air District is presenting on this presentation, we invite you to think about the general health and quality of air in Shafter and how the findings relate to these. It could be that after listening to the presentation, you might have some questions or you might need some more information to understand it. So if that's the case, we welcome you to ask any questions or comments or concerns if you have them. I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic on to Jessica for today's presentation.
I'm happy to kick us off, but you will not be hearing mostly from me today. You will be hearing from one of our folks named Tanner Johnston. He is here with us from our Air Quality Analysis Group. I will just add, just to help kick us off, that some of the presentation we find will work better if we present a few slides and then have Tanner take questions. So we'll definitely let Tanner pause, but Harder & Company, definitely we look to you to help us out. If it does feel like questions are building up, Tanner's happy, I'm sure, to pause and help us out with that. So with that, Tanner, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, everybody. I've already been introduced, but I'm Tanner, work at the Valley Air District, and I'm excited to provide this update for you all. So I will go ahead and get started. So, today we're going to be talking about kind of a few things. One is the status of the air monitoring plan implementation. We're going to be talking about the air monitoring data that we've collected, and of course, we're going to be answering any questions and comments, and of course, be taking any recommendations. First things first, this is our implementation status. Currently, we've implemented just about everything we've planned except La Colonia. Of course, I have some info on the next slide, but I'll just let you take this one in for a second. This is the location of all of our monitors. And also in the monitoring column, of course, it's the type of monitor that we're using. Of course, some more interim monitoring from our monitoring vans. So here's a picture of kind of our more typical monitoring, pretty standard monitor here. But we also, of course, have our trailers. One of them is the Farm Labor Center trailer. That's kind of parked out of Shafter just a bit, kind of out of the bounds of the city. And then, of course, we have our vans. We were using our van for the Lurdo Highway in 99, trying to identify what kind of, the kind of smell that everyone was experiencing and stuff. So this is the type of van that we'd be using kind of for, monitoring that occurs every once in a while or for some special analysis. So for our community air monitoring, of course, we're continuing to conduct localized air monitoring. We're of course also doing, our bit more special analyses here and there whenever something comes up. We're working to deploy our final air monitoring platform as recommended, by the recommended network design. We have almost all of them complete except La Colonia. But luckily, La Colonia construction on that is going to be starting this spring. So hopefully won't be too long before we have that set up. And then, of course, I already mentioned, our air monitoring van, points of interest. We usually drive those out and monitor at different points of interest to, of course, help with our different analysis work. Kind of a bit more info, kind of in the last meeting that we had on some of our more, special analysis work. And then, of course, we also have lab analysis that's still ongoing, and it's not featured in this presentation. But if you would like, a bit more info on actually just mostly anything, I guess, in this presentation, go ahead and check out our quarterly reports. I know there's a link kind of at the end of this presentation that I believe someone else will be walking you through, but you'll be able to access those quarterly reports on there and see a little bit more about our lab analysis, whether that be PM 2.5 speciation or VOC speciation or something like that. If you'd like to delve and learn a little bit more. So I'll pause here for any questions if anyone has any.
Sorry, Tanner, this is Diana. You said, where did you say that people can find those quarterly reports if they would like to find them?
Yeah, at the end of the presentation, we'll actually be having a little bit of a walkthrough through kind of the community portion of the Valley Air website and kind of where you'll be able to access not only the quarterly reports, but plenty of other community info. Whether or not it's Shafter or Fresno, or I guess if you want to check out another community, you could do that as well. So
I should stay tuned. Thank you.
yeah, stay tuned. Heck yeah. And this is a little bit of a summary of kind of what we're going to be talking a bit about today. We've seen a bit of a decrease in PM2.5, especially when we're comparing kind of a later time in the year where, PM 2.5 tends to be a little bit larger. We've seen kind of a decrease in that. Of course, we'll be talking about higher wintertime PM 2.5 and why that is the case. And then talking about annual averages as well, when it comes to PM 2.5, and of course air monitoring data, not only our community webpage, but we're also going to be, well, we'll have CARB talk about that slide, but we'll have them talk about their AQView. So you'll be able to easily access and get information about current air quality, which is fantastic. Anyways, so time of day, day of the week, time of the year, pretty much, a lot of different things can influence air quality. In the summer, ozone is typically the main pollutant. In the summer, we have a lot more heat, temperatures are rising. And it just so happens that ozone is kind of activated by this by this heat. It's made from nitrogen oxides or NOx, and volatile organic compounds that are from like local emissions and such, and that usually generates ozone. So typically in the summer, of course, we see higher ozone values, kind of alongside higher temperatures. Of course, NOx and shafter, that usually comes from trucks and other on-road vehicles, heavy-duty off-road vehicles, or industrial processes. So plenty of different ways to have NOx created, and with a little bit of heat, then we have ozone. So of course, something to watch out for in the summer. Now in the winter, you'll see here in a second that PM 2.5 and PM 10, our particulate matters are much more abundant, I guess you could say. Particulate matter is usually emitted directly, from different local emissions or formed from certain compounds like NOx. Also, particulate matter levels tend to get worse under inversions, which I'll be talking about that here in a second, and definitely helps make PM 2.5 and particulate matter just kind of worse in general. Of course, moving from the summer into the winter as well, we end up being very, very dry. That also aids in PM10 levels kind of increasing as well. So this is what an inversion layer looks like. Now, typically, during the summer, surface air that's very, very close to the ground, is a bit hotter. So you don't typically get as strong of an inversion layer. But when we're talking about wintertime, typically when it's a lot colder in the valley, that surface air is much, much cooler. And usually, especially overnight, air above that tends to be quite a bit warmer. And what it does is it kind of creates a lid over the valley, and it doesn't really let air rise as much. So we don't get as much mixing. So in turn, we tend to have a bit of a lid on the valley and have more pollution that kind of remains trapped here. So a lot of the time, especially, around wildfire season, we get smoke in the valley, and then, it's kind of close to the winter, or, we have some sort of inversion overnight, and that'll trap a lot of smoke, that'll trap a lot of pollutants. And yeah, this just happens much more frequently and usually much stronger in the winter as well. Anyways, here is our quarterly average comparisons. What we're doing here is we're comparing PM 2.5, kind of our quarterly average of PM 2.5 from 2023 versus 2022. We have seen that everything is decreased by approximately 5 micrograms, which is a pretty significant decrease. Luckily, all of these quarterly averages are below the PM 2.5 standard, and this is especially during a time of the year where PM 2.5 averages, are much larger, especially under those inversions that I talked about on the previous slide. One thing of note here is that golden oak Elementary tends to be a site that runs a little bit higher. We've heard, that there's trucks and other vehicles that tend to idle next to it. It's also kind of in a urban location. There just tends to be a lot more activity, higher levels of activity. Especially what we've learned on the last couple of slides is it could be due to NOx and, vehicles as well. PM 2.5 can be created. So in general, since it's much more urban, much more in the center of the city, definitely see a little bit of an increase. It could also be due to, burning and stuff that we haven't observed or, illegal burning or, that sort of thing. So of course, since you guys are part of the community, if you do see any of that, or if you do see any, possible local emissions or anything that may be affecting this site, please let us know. And you guys have already done that, so thank you. But yeah, on to the next slide. So this is a bit of a heat map here. We're just kind of highlighting that everything's been relatively green, but of course, under days of really poor dispersion, especially during the winter time, where we get these stronger inversions. It's kind of a double hitter. We end up having very poor dispersion, which already isn't very good. Plus, strong overnight temperature inversions really tends to exacerbate these PM 2.5 values. So that's why, we've marked this in red. We really wanted to, let the community know. On top of that, we were working with Bianca, and she really helped us out with this presentation. But she also wanted to double check that there wasn't any ag burning going on during this period. Luckily, the district was able to verify that there was no ag burning during this period. None of it was authorized. So essentially, it's pretty much due to pretty poor dispersion and really bad inversions. Yeah. Next slide.
Tanner, I have a couple
Oh, yeah.
questions, if that's okay. Can you go back to the previous slide?
For sure.
So can you talk a little bit more what you mean by dispersion? And also, I think in the previous slide, you had mentioned the PM 2.5 standard. I'm wondering if you could share what that standard is.
Yes, for sure. The current PM 2.5 standard is 12 micrograms. And so we'll be taking a look here at the annual averages actually in a second, and I'll be able to explain it just a little bit better because it does fit with the annual average. But yeah. What was your other question? There was
Oh, it was about dispersion, like what you mean exactly by dispersion.
Yeah. So, dispersion, typically, I mean, when we're talking about it on like a weather scale, sometimes we'll be getting low pressure or high pressure over the region. And when we have high pressure, right, or temperature inversions and stuff like that, typically it traps it, kind of keeps it on the ground, and it's not allowed to kind of mix up into the atmosphere. So it's hard to kind of dig or move pollutants out of the valley when we're under poor dispersion, but it's much easier to lower pollutant values and get stuff out of the valley, especially when we have better dispersion. Winds even help with dispersion as well, kind of some horizontal dispersion. So yeah.
Tanner, can you go back? I think Vanessa, and sorry if we didn't explain it. I think Tanner had a slide where he just visually explained it. Maybe just go back to that slide, the inversion layer. And that's what Tanner was just describing, where when he was talking about pressure, high pressure, low pressure, the idea is that there's that lid that either allows for pollution to leave or doesn't allow pollution to leave. And so dispersion is that leaving, right? It's not there anymore. It's dispersing or mixing everywhere. So when Tanner's saying poor, it looks like this, where there's that lid that stops things from leaving and it keeps it close to the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah, another
Thank
way
you,
I would
guys.
say this is another way is you could say it's just stagnant air. There's just not a lot of movement. And I know we have talked about this on the other presentations as well. And I know the word dispersion might be something that not everybody hears all the time, but stagnant air is another way of talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Oh, I see Cesar has a hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I know I've heard from a few folks in the community that sometimes they experience smells earlier in the morning. Does the heat from the sun or the sun rays, when the sun rises, cause those types of smells or pollutants to disperse or start moving more in the atmosphere whenever the sun comes up?
I see what you're saying. Maybe I can help answer that, and Tanner and try back me up if I'm. So generally, I would say less about the sun and more about what actually that inversion layer tends to be strongest in the morning. And that's because that's the time between that when you saw that slide, and maybe Tanner, if you go back to it, it's
Yeah.
actually
Oh,
a
yeah, of course.
great illustration. You see how we're talking about, it's really about the temperature of the air above or below that yellow line. And so in the morning, that tends to actually be when that layer is the strongest. So it's also possible, Cesar, that folks are getting up and they're like leaving their home in the morning when all of whatever is trapped on the ground is trapped on the ground. So if it's odors or whatever, as the sun rises, that actually helps dispersion. It warms like all of the particles up. It helps that layer lift and eventually release. So that's why throughout the day, you smell things tend to be less and less, or, if there are odors, that might be the case. And that's why it starts to settle at night and in the morning, kind of, how the coldest part of the day is like right before the sun rises. It's that same concept. The highest pressure is going to be right before the sun rises and starts to warm everything up. So it's actually kind of not related to the sun interacting so much as the sun helps warm things up and lift that lid off of the valley.
Awesome. And is that why some of the pollutants are worse in the winter than the summer because it's hotter in the summer?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I would say certain pollutants though, right?
Yeah,
And maybe, Tanner, can we go back? Maybe we'll just really quickly go back.
Oh, of
So
course.
this summer, maybe just Tanner said it so well, but just the summer, yes, right? The 100%, it's because the sun interacts and creates ozone. In the winter, it's the opposite. The sun actually will help mix, but because we don't get as much sun, the inversion layer stays there longer, which tends to be why we get pollutants trapped to the surface.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sweet. All right, so I'll go ahead and move on to annual averages here. And this will be the moment where the PM 2.5 standard gets to shine. So yeah, our annual PM 2.5 standard is at 12 micrograms per cubic meter. And these are our annual averages for Shafter from 2021 through 2023. And luckily, what we've seen is that there's been a decrease over the past couple of years. And what's great is that we went from having some annual averages slightly over that 12 microgram standard to every single site being below the annual PM 2.5 standard, which I think is fantastic. Of course, though, we have Golden Oak, who still decides to remain the highest. I mean, kind of, mainly in 2022 and 2023. Shafter Grimway was larger, had a larger annual PM 2.5 average in 2021. But of course, when it comes to 2023, Golden Oak is definitely noticeably higher. Could be due to all the things that I've listed before, but I'll go ahead and list them again. Definitely more urban site, more activity. And of course, if anyone sees anything, please let us know. But other than that, we've seen kind of less wildfires through 2023, but also the impacts from wildfires have just been overall less, which is fantastic. We've also seen, some improved conditions and some better dispersion, but of course that's not, the only contributor to lower PM 2.5 averages. It's not like we're getting, rain and great dispersion or anything, every single day helping to clear the valley out. But it's definitely due to maybe some, emissions reductions that we've done either, from the community or kind of overall for the entire valley as well. So we've been seeing some improvements, and I hope we continue to see improvements. Think it's going in a good direction. So here is a bit of a closer look on kind of what those 2023 annual averages mean. Of course, each bar kind of represents a different month here in case it was confusing. It's definitely a little bit of a tougher graph maybe to get. But you could see here that of course, kind of early in the year as well as late in the year, you could definitely see a bit of an increase in PM 2.5. Of course, in relation to the temperature inversions that we've mentioned, particulate matter just being kind of more active in the winter, especially when there's burning going on and temperature inversions and everything. So, um, our star runner here, of course, Golden Oak is still still the highest, kind of across the board. Averages every month were the highest out of all of these sites. So, um, next slide here. We have, of course, been considering PM10 as well. This isn't just a PM 2.5 meeting. But what's great is that through the entirety of the year, there was not a single exceedance of the PM10 standard that we have, which would be a daily average of all the way up at good old 155. So, so we decided to pull it back a little bit and kind of give a bigger, easier to understand overview of the entire year here. And everything looked really, really fantastic at the beginning of the year. I'd say PM10 looked pretty exceptionally low. Mainly one of the reasons is in late 2022, California received record amounts of rain, which allowed for wetter soils. And of course, we had low PM10 kind of until we ended up drying up a little bit during the summer. And then, of course, in the winter, when we're extra dry, PM10 is even worse. The reason for that being, drier valley means drier soils, which equals loose soil, and mixed with, of course, some high winds. We're going to be seeing some blowing dust and some, larger PM10 values when the valley's pretty dry. But luckily, the entire year's looked pretty exceptional. So. And I will go ahead and pass it to Rocio, right, for the walkthrough of our community portion of the Valley Air website. So
Maybe I'll just pause before we go to Rocio and see if there's any questions
Yeah,
before
that's
you move
right.
on from the data.
I have a question, Tanner. In the slide before, you said what the value was for PM10 that we're trying to stay below. Can you repeat what that was?
Yeah. So the 1987 PM10 24-hour NACS, or our PM10 standard, is going to be all the way up at 155 micrograms per cubic meter. So pretty
Okay.
high.
Okay, so these are like in the below 50-ish range usually, so it seems like we're well below those, if I'm interpreting this correctly.
Yeah, this is also a monthly average. So the highest PM10 value, I believe that Shafter saw, at least a 24-hour average, was like October 19th of last year. There was a 24-hour average value of like 107. But of course, when you zoom that out a little bit and have these monthly averages, it's going to look a lot lower. It's not really comparable to that PM10 standard. But luckily, we haven't had any exceedances or anything like that for Shafter, so everything's looking pretty great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Bianca, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hola, esto es César. Estamos aquí en Chapter. Movieron el estándar del PM 2.5 a 9 hace poco. ¿Cómo se mira los números de Shafter comparándolo al estándar nuevo federal? Creo que lo cambiaron de 12 a 9.
I can
That is
help.
that's for PM 2.5. And luckily, we won't have to, meet that standard for a little while here. Right now, we're working on our 12 microgram PM 2.5 standard.
And maybe just to help for folks that I think Tanner and Cesar know what they're talking about together, but just to explain, the PM 2.5 standard is set by EPA, so that's the federal government. And every so often they revise, they look up all the health data and try to, they might change that standard or amend it. And they recently announced, but it is not final and there's still a whole process to roll it out and make it official for us to try to attain it, but that standard that is currently 12 will move to 9. And so definitely to Tanner's point, we're working to lower all of the air quality across the valley to meet both of those standards eventually. But right now, nothing changes in terms of, Tanner, if you go back one slide.
Oh, of course.
Sorry, 2 slides. The one
Oh,
right
yeah.
the annual one.
The annual one. There we go.
Yeah. So if you look, the 9, even though our line is at 12, the way that we present the data won't change. It's just the line will be lower. And actually, if you look at 9, just to answer your question, in 2023, with the exception of one of the sites, many, if and all the other sites at Shafter look like they're very close or below that 9 level. So I think that's just a good way to look at it, even though it's not the number we're always striving towards, but it's not the main number we're focused on right now. You can see that we're really close to making it, at least with this last year's set of data.
Thank you, Cesar, for that question. Do you have any follow-up questions? Does anyone else have any questions or comments that they'd like to share at this time?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, Vanessa.
Thank you, Diana. I actually do have a follow-up question, if that's okay. If we can go back to the PM 2.5, but yes, that one. I see that it's pretty steep going from November to December, and I understand that average PM 2.5 is higher in the winter months, so that makes sense. But I'm wondering if you can share as to why you think there's such a steep increase in the monthly average from November to December.
Definitely. Yeah. Late last year, we were definitely seeing really, really strong temperature inversions around December, really late into the year. Yeah, we were also seeing just, a lot of high pressure and less dispersion kind of throughout. Yeah, definitely helped kind of pop up some of the values really, really late into the year. Yeah.
And is that something, this is Diana, is that something that's common, like you would expect to see something like that most years, or do you think there was something funky going on about 2023.
Yeah. What's actually really interesting is if you take most monitors, whether it be regulatory or community, and you kind of just graph out, PM 2.5 like for the entire year, you will see a very large increase usually towards the end of the year. Yeah, it's extremely normal for especially when we're looking at a monthly average, you're going to be seeing a lot higher values closer to the end of the year. I mean, if you look at all of these like monthly averages, right, and you kind of average them in your head or whatever, a lot of them are below, that 10 most of the time. So and a lot of the sites their averages and everything pretty close to that 12. Um, Usually values, really late in the year, definitely kind of really help push up some annual averages to where we need to, work on some more emissions reductions and stuff like that to kind of help lower it. So,
Thank you.
sweet. Well, just before I pass it off, I guess I'll just explain what we're going to be doing real quick. Going to be taking a look at the community page on our Valley Air website, looking at monitoring data from our vans, quarterly reports, weekly air monitoring updates, and the like, stuff that our camp team and anybody that's involved with our AB617 communities works hard on. So please go ahead and check out any of this insanely awesome data if you feel the need. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing, I guess, and I'll let Rocio take it.
Yes, thank you, Tanner. Let me go ahead and just share that link with everyone that you have there in your slides in
Oh,
case you guys would
yeah.
like to follow along.
And sorry,
I'll share this.
Rocio, there is one more question in the chat I want to make sure we get to before I think it makes sense we pause. And Tanner, can you bring up the daily average? Or it says chart with the daily averages and explain why it's skewed far up. So there's a question from Cesar in the chat. And so maybe we'll share your slides again. Are you talking about, when you're talking about daily average, we have monthly, we have annual. So I'm not sure, Cesar, if you know which chart you're referring to.
I think it's the daily where you go farther back, where all the green colors, there you go. Is that the one?
Is this what you're talking about, Cesar?
Yeah. Could that section, that red rectangle, explain why it went so high up in December? Because I think like one big spike could probably skew the averages for that month. That's what that looks like to me.
Exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Tanner. I think you had a good explanation. We can do this one over again.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate, it's definitely due to really poor dispersion, bad temperature inversions, but of course, yeah, late in the year or early in the year, winter time in general, we just see much higher PM 2.5 averages to the point where the monthly averages go up and then the annual average, of course, goes up as well. Yeah, much higher. Like,
Yeah.
I'll say like in the summer, a lot of the time we're getting like good AQI for, PM 2.5 and, ozone can be a bit of an issue. But, the second that we start making our way into the winter season, that of course flips on its head. Ozone without the heat, it's not really generated, but, particulate matter with, strong inversions and poor dispersion, that's definitely going to start showing up for sure. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Cesar, just pointing out that even just this period of poor dispersion could cause that giant spike that Diana just asked about. So that's really good observation. Awesome. Okay, now I think we're ready for you, Rocio. Thank you for your patience.
No worries. Glad that everyone's questions are getting answered. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen now. And so again, I did just drop the link in the chat in case folks wanted to follow along while I go over this. but you can go ahead and click on the link also from the presentation, or you can also go to community.valleyair.org/community-air-monitoring. And so if you go down here, you're going to see the 4 AB617 communities. So we'll find Shafter here. And if you click on the monitoring page, it'll take you to the Shafter air monitoring page. And on the top here, you can see a list of where the air monitors are located at. So you can see the DMV, the Farm Labor Center, Golden Oak Elementary School, Brimway Academy, and Sequoia Elementary School. And if you scroll down a bit, you can also see the map right here. And then since these are real-time air monitors, feel free to click on any one of these to see the live data. So for example, I'm gonna just click on the DMV, and it's going to show the live air monitoring data. And so right here we have the PM 2.5, and you can also go ahead and switch to PM 10. And if you want to look at different dates, you can also do that here. It has like a little calendar. And I'll just go back. And I know folks might be familiar also with the weekly air monitoring updates. So if you're signed up to receive meeting materials, you are probably familiar with this because this is where we pull that from. So these are called the weeklies, and it kind of summarizes the whole week summary for the monitors in Shafter. And so we do keep all of them. So again, if you want to go further back into previous months, if you just click on View Archive, it'll have a longer list. And scrolling down, you'll also see more information here, such as the Community Air Monitoring Plan. And as Tanner was previously mentioning, this is also where we keep the quarterly air monitoring reports. So these are just like a more detailed summary if you want to look through those. And then for the last section, we have the Air Monitoring Steering Committee updates. And this is where we provide all the presentations that from the air monitoring team provides to us. So right here, you'll be seeing also the presentation that Tanner is presenting today. And that pretty much it's a summary of the high level things that you can look through on this page. And with that, I can pass it back to Tanner to continue on with the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah. I guess I'll share my screen for Carb if they want to do their slide. Here we go. Let me fast forward, and here we go.
I'm not sure if folks from the AQView team are with us yet or on right now. I don't know if Michelle, if you see anyone from that team.
Yeah, my apologies. I'm a little out of the loop. We lost Cameron and I'm not up to date on everything going on. Let me
Yeah, no
see.
worries. No worries. Maybe then, Tanner, yeah, if you just walk us through this, and then we can just drop the link in the chat for another time to go over with the group.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I don't see
luckily,
any of our people, so just verifying. Sorry.
oh no, you're good. Yeah, luckily I've gone ahead and actually taken a look at this site a little bit. Super handy. You could get hourly PM 2.5 data and the like. I believe you can also select which, pollutant you want to take a look at. The Shafter community is on there. It's pretty fantastic. There's a bunch of different graphs and everything that you can look at as well. Just a super handy tool. Yeah, I'm glad that they've, created something to where everyone can go ahead and check out air monitoring data for their local community. And yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and just drop this link. Whoops. I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat for anyone that's interested. Yeah, super useful, pretty easy to use.
Thanks, Tanner. And
that's all I have.
No, I'll just let folks know I know this isn't the first time that we've talked to this group about it. And I know Carb's been here to talk a little bit more. Basically, it's one of the main roles, right, that the state plays in this whole program is to compile all the statewide efforts, including all of the work you're all doing to help us analyze air quality data in your community. So this is just a way, it's a different look at the data that you all already have access to for our data. But if you're curious about other folks across the state or just a different look at the access or at the data and the way it's displayed, you can look at the AQView link. And what we can do, if folks are interested, we can have a separate call out in a future meeting where folks can walk through. We've also in the past, we'll talk a little bit about it later, but we will be having an in-person meeting next month. So we can also help have folks from the CARB team or even from our team kind of have computers out and to like hand walk folks through this tool. It's definitely pretty useful, but might take a little bit of time to learn how to use. So we're just grateful for the support and look forward to having any of your questions kind of directed to CARB.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with it, but I think that I have heard too that if anybody is really data oriented and want specific kinds of data that maybe aren't showing available there, that we can look into getting that too. So I want to put that out there for the more technical people out there listening. And yeah, I will make sure we bring somebody to that meeting.
Sweet. Well, that is it for the presentation. If anyone has any additional comments and or questions.
I have a question. Would it be possible for this presentation be translated in Spanish for folks who want access to it?
It is, yeah. Luckily you'll be able to download it. You'll be able to pick either the English presentation or the Spanish presentation on our website.
And we sent all of the Spanish materials a week ago to folks, including this presentation, to the folks on our call that who typically get a packet in Spanish. So hopefully folks were able to follow along. Typically, and maybe I'll just make this note, anytime we have really technical stuff, we like sending it out anyway because it's very technical. But especially in this case, it's hard to be bilingual on the same screen. So that's when we do send that out. So yeah, it's already available. And we can also, it looks like Rocio's dropping it in the chat. It's already available in Spanish.
Great. Thank you for confirming, Jessica. And thank you, Rocio, for dropping the link to that presentation in Spanish. As Jessica mentioned, this was kind of a technical presentation. There were a lot of charts involved. So if folks have any lingering questions about what those charts mean, maybe you need some help interpreting what the gist of those charts is, we definitely invite you to post any questions that you have, as well as any comments related to what you just heard today.
I'm not seeing anything, Vanessa, in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. And I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on to Diana so that she can facilitate our next agenda item.
Yeah. And we've been sitting now for about an hour, so if you want to like stand up or shake or whatever, like go for it. You know, we won't be offended if you move around. It's a tough time of day to be sitting. The next thing that we have on our agenda are the CERP measure implementation updates. And as usual, we're not going to provide an update on every single one of the measures, and we've strategically selected 4 of them for today. And we based the 4 that we picked for today based on what we know about each measure's timeline and where they are in the progress and which ones need kind of your all's input in like around this time. And then also the things that you all raised, the people who came to the agenda setting meeting last month, raised a number of questions about different measures. And so that's the other reason why we picked the ones that we have. So big plug here for agenda setting meetings. We really do love hearing what you want to hear about. Because again, as you all know, there's a bunch of measures. And so it really is helpful to hear which ones you want to hear about in each of the meetings. And part of the reason that we don't talk about all of the measures is because there's a lot. And so to give each measure enough time for it to sink in, because some of them are pretty technical, or we really want to have time for each of you to ask questions. And so really, again, kind of want to narrow it down to talking about a couple of the measures at each different meeting. So the ones that we're going to talk about today are the bike lane project. And as a reminder, that measure provides funding for bike path construction. Urban greening, and that measure, of course, aims to increase trees in the community. Paving, and that measure aims to improve and construct roads and sidewalks. And then the last one we'll be talking about today is the EV charging infrastructure, and that measure aims to give incentives to public and private agencies that provide publicly accessible charging stations in Shafter. So the goal for all of these updates, as it is for pretty much everything in these meetings, is to get your feedback on next steps in order to move them forward. So please ask questions if something isn't clear, and provide your feedback on the action items that the different presenters will give. So first, I believe we're going to hear from you, Jessica, and then I think somebody from the city of Shafter, and then Gus Jr. So I believe I'm passing it to you now, Jessica. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. This is Jessica again. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. So give me a moment, and then some positive thumbs up if we all see it.
Yep.
I'm also going to move this guy out of the way so you can just see my screen. Actually, in relation to what I just mentioned about bilingual slides, these are just quick updates. So folks did not get this well ahead of time. We did post it, but we did not send it out ahead of time because it has up to the minute real-time information, but it is bilingual and it is posted, and we're happy to send it out to folks if they need it after the fact. So our first update, as Diana mentioned, is going to be the bike lanes project, and I'll just jump right in because I do know this might take some of this might be new for folks, or will be new for folks, because we're really excited about the next steps. So as a reminder, we because they all require sort of the same process, bike lanes, sidewalks, and paving kind of got lumped in together. And in total in the SERP, you all have $3.8 million for those projects together. As you know, and we'll provide a quick update on the status, we do have 2 projects that are moving forward based on prioritization that you all helped us out with, that take up about 2.5 million of that total. So that means we have about a little less than 1.3 million remaining for other priority projects. And so we had an in-person meeting, as you all know, which feels like it was yesterday, but was almost a year ago now. And one of the main topics during that meeting, and one of the main places we wanted feedback, was on bike paths. That was something that was important to you all. We had even extra members that were just public participants at this meeting. And as you can see here in the picture, we have some folks that are also with us on the call from the City of Shafter Planning and Public Works Departments to hear all of your concerns. Many of the concerns we heard were you want a safe way to bike through town. Folks wanted to have a bike path that connects the schools, parks, and other key venues to the downtown Shafter area. And certainly making sure that there were safe places to bike on major roads such as State Route 43 and Lerdo. This is, of course, not every single comment we heard. These were just the main themes during that meeting. So I actually have a slide here, and I'm going to pass it to Mike James from the Public Works Department to talk a little bit more about the project. But there is a proposed project to do exactly that and meet those exact goals. So I'll pass it to you, Mike, to talk a little bit about this proposed project.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate you having me, and I welcome. I say hello to all the committee members. It's good to see you again virtually. The city has prepared a preliminary plan for bike lane improvements in what we refer to as the core area. The goals with this plan are to, with the funding available, have bike lane connectivity within the core area of the city. This is connectivity between the schools, parks, transit areas, and other downtown destinations. The roadways recommended for bike lanes are preferably fully developed. They already have existing pavement and sidewalks. They have sufficient public right-of-way, or most importantly, they've been requested by the public. And it's important to point out that in this case, we're focusing on painted bike lanes, not necessarily separate bike paths. And it also, the work being shown here would complement the work already in the works or already being planned along Highway 43 in the North Shafter area, which is also AB617 funded. It's also important to point out that there is a considerable amount of funding in this particular project for pavement sealing and overlays. It's not just painting a bike lane, and this is because we want to make sure we have a smooth paving service so the bike lane looks better, it lasts longer. And the level of pavement work being proposed really depends on the road in question. And in Shafter Avenue is an example of a road that's in pretty rough shape, as I think many Shafter residents and businesses can attest. So that's one example of a roadway section that's going to get, but we're proposing an overlay in addition to painting bike lanes. So the goal with this project is, again, to stay within the funding available. It's a scalable project, so it can be downsized if it's desired to use some of the funding elsewhere. And then I also want to point out that the city is ready to move forward whenever the district and the committee are on board. The first phase of the work would consist of design work that could conceivably commence this summer. And then that would allow construction or installation of the bike lanes to take place shortly thereafter, preferably before the rain and fog season starts later this year. So that concludes what I have to share about the slide that's being shown here. And I'd be happy to take feedback or respond to questions.
Great, thank you. We did have a question in the chat about the slides, and thank you, Rocio and Jessica, for linking people to that in the chat. Other questions about the bike lane project updates? Don't see any hands or anything in the chat. Well, if anything pops up in anybody's head as we go along, then feel free to, raise your hand or put it in the chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for walking us through this. I'll just go to the next slide and just talk about next steps. If this is something that the committee, there are no objections, we know we want to move this funding forward. And as a reminder, we're going to talk about this more over the next few meetings, but we are kind of in our last year of SERP implementation, right? It's a 5-year-long process. We have a lot in the SERP that we've accomplished, but a lot left to go. So we're really just grateful for you all helping us push these along. And then of course, for the city of Shafter for coming forward with a project that seems like it meets a lot of the goals that folks put out for us. So should this be a project that folks are interested in having us move forward, it sounds like from the update that Mike just gave us that this could move forward rather quickly and be a really great way to implement something very soon here. So I'll just let you know that if we're moving forward with this, we would still have to work with our governing board for approval, and of course work with folks on a contract. But we would work on that to make sure that's expedited and then that the ball's not in our court on that end. We know the eagerness that folks have for moving this forward. But we definitely want to look to you all. If there's any concerns, please let us know. What we'll do, absent of any major concerns today, is we can start moving forward on all of the moving pieces and parts. And then check in with you all again at our March meeting, just sort of as a final, okay, now that you've all had this, to Cesar's point, we can send this presentation out for folks to take a look at with a little bit more time for folks that maybe don't want to access it or can't access it online. And then we can just check in at the March meeting with the same proposal in front of us and see how we feel about it. So as long as that process sounds good to folks, I'll go ahead and leave us there and move on to the next update that we have. All right. Great. Okay, so one of the other questions folks had, and thank you all for going along with us. We wanted to make sure we answered as many questions as we heard as possible, so it's going to feel a little abrupt, but we're now on to urban greening. And as a reminder, urban greening is the proposal to plant trees with the city of Shafter. We've already gone through the process where we've selected who's going to do the work. It's city of Shafter in partnership with Kern Tree Foundation, and there's going to be a contract that needs to be executed. And what that just means is we have to enter into an agreement for the city of Shafter to begin the design work for that urban greening, which is planting of trees. So in the spring, once that contract is executed in the next few weeks, materials can be obtained and we can begin planting. And the goal is to complete planting across Park, Lerdo Highway, and other public spaces in the summer of 2024. So I just wanted to let you know that it sounds like we're good to move forward rather quickly and that we're working very closely with the city to move that forward, and really just excited and eager. I know this has been one of those long time waiting type projects and that we're really excited to move it forward. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions in terms of next steps for urban greening. Awesome. Again, if other questions occur to us, of course, we can always go back slides or ask me in the chat. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, there are other sidewalk bike lane improvement programs that are underway. They've been underway for a little bit now. A lot of this is planning and entering into agreements and getting approvals from all sorts of people. So even though you have all kind of signed off and showed your support, there are a couple of steps still left to go. So I'll just let you know that for the City of Shafter project, this is the one along State Route 43 near Apple Market, Shafter Public Works will issue what we call an RFP, very similar to the one you all helped us issue for vegetative barriers. It's the same concept. They put out a request and they ask people to apply to design and engineer the sidewalk bike path road improvement project. The hope is that they issue that in the spring of 2024, so in the next few months. And then once they award, so once they select someone to do all of that work, the actual work itself should take about 6 to 9 months. So assuming everything is kind of on track as we're hoping it will be, the construction should be completed by the beginning of next year. So we will, of course, keep updating you, and we're happy to also send out email updates just to keep folks moving along and understanding where we're at with the process. But as soon as we have that next step and as soon as we know that actual services or actual construction will take place, we'll alert you all. And I imagine since, of course, the residents that live in Shafter, you will, of course, start seeing that construction happen. So you can help keep us informed, those that don't get to see it every day. There is another construction project, of course, as you know, and something that I know a lot of you are keeping a close eye on as well. And that is the Kern County project in the La Colonia area. So the contract was executed with Kern County. So that's who's in charge. It's not City of Shafter. And that was recently executed at the end of the year. We expect that the design services, so that same kind of process that the city has to go through, the county also has to go through. They expect that to be done sometime in the June timeframe and the construction to take about a year. So we expect in June of next year for that construction to be complete. But again, if any delays or changes to that schedule happens, we will let you know. Any questions before I move on to the final update, which is a really exciting kind of opportunity for charging?
Don't see anything in the chat at this point, Jessica.
Awesome. Thank you for monitoring that. I am going to stop sharing my screen. And I think that was my last slide. Okay. Finally, one thing that we talked about again almost a year ago, it's one of those things that takes a bit to get going, is at our in-person meeting, we had folks from the Central California Asthma Collaborative, or CCAC, help us with one of our stations. We talked about mapping out where you all felt the best placement for charging electric vehicles would be throughout your community. One of the reasons that CCAC has been so involved with this is because they work with the state on a program that also has funding for chargers. And so with your SERP funding plus this state funding, we really think we can get a lot of what we call fast chargers. So the chargers that charge your car in like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, the ones that are really useful for charging a car. For the public, we want to leverage or combine the state's money with your SERP money. And the best way we think we can do that is to partner with CCAC on putting forth an application to the state to do that work. So we do have folks from CCAC here to kind of talk a little bit about, they took all of your priorities and took a look at all of the different locations you all talked about and want to kind of update you all on the next steps on that process and how we're going to all work together to partner on making sure we bring chargers to you all. So I'm not sure if I'm passing to Brianda or Gus Jr., but take it away, folks.
You're on mute, Miranda.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Jessica. Am I good? Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. And just to give a pre-warning that my internet connection is very unstable. So if I go off camera, it's just because I don't want to lose the connection. But yes, thank you so much, Jessica, for that introduction to CCAC and our role in this measure. I am joined today by my colleague Gustavo Aguirre Jr., and we are excited to be discussing this measure once again with the CSC. As Jessica mentioned previously, we first brought this to the CSC during the GSPP1 application window period, and I'll go a little bit about what Cali VIP and GSPP1 mean for this measure. But we are happy to bring it back to the CSC so we can move forward with this funding opportunity. So just to give a quick recap, Cali VIP is a California electric vehicle infrastructure project. It's a long name, but it is brought by the California Energy Commission. It's funded through them, and we are in partnership with California, or with the Center for Sustainable Energy, CSE. And our role is primarily to bring this funding into rural communities and communities who have been historically been left behind when it comes to funding for opportunities like this. So once again, thank you for having us tonight. So what we want the GSPP1 period, which is a Golden State Priority project under Cali VIP, it works through application windows, was focused in the Central Valley and down in the South by Imperial Valley. And so that window of application closed. There was a second window, GSPP2, which was open, primarily focused in the northern region, and which we also helped do outreach for. And now that window of application has just had closed last year, and GSPP3 is looking to open its third window of application rounds, and that will hopefully be by spring of this year. So some important things to know is that the past GSPP windows were only exclusive to disadvantaged communities and low-income areas. And for GSPP3, it is looking like it'll be open statewide, which is why we wanted to bring it to the CSC as soon as we could, because understanding with electric infrastructure, electric vehicle infrastructure, we could run into obstacles like electrical capacity for a site, permitting with the city. And so we wanted to give this application the best chance possible to be selected, and for it to be under tier 1, which is a shovel-ready project. So with that, I want to go ahead. I'm not sure, Jessica, if I have sharing capabilities?
You
I think I do.
should. Let
Okay,
us know if you
perfect.
don't.
I do. Thank you so
Okay.
much. I'll go ahead and share. So I want to go ahead and present this list tonight. And I do want to make everybody aware that we will be open for questions, both Gustavo and I. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. This list was generated through amenities of the carrot map, which we showed to the CSC during the May meeting. It's also compiled based off of outreach and feedback from the CSC. You guys had really great inputs on where you want to see the direct current fast chargers installed. So Cali VIP and the funding opportunity will fund up to 4 level 3 chargers, and it'll fund up to 50% of a project, up to 100,000 per level 3 charger. Um, so these were the primary locations, and these are ranked again based off of suitability, accessibility, and amenities in Shafter. I did want to note that the Air Districts was really kind enough to share their notes with us. So we primarily took this from their notes, and us, the CCAC, we added 2 locations that we were given by a few CSC members in our note taking that was missing from the original list that the Air District provided us. I do want to note that number 10 might be a little bit off. That's just the way it's listed on Kara, but I have found a few different names for that location. Steve, maybe you can write down the correct name on that on the chat if you're available to do so. But
Brianda,
with
can I
that,
ask you, sorry, really quickly, can you zoom in a little bit so we can see the
yes,
names a little bit bigger?
yes, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Perfect. Yeah, way better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. But I'm glad it's still on and I haven't lost connection. So with that, I'll go ahead and pause and take any questions that the CSC might have for us or Gustavo. And I see Linda has her hand raised.
That correction facility, I feel like has been closed down by the state. However, there is a public works area that has a parking lot. I don't know if we could maybe work with Public Works on having a charge facility over there, if it worked for them, because there's actually going to be a big rec improvement. Shafter Rec is moving over into that area, so it might be a really good place to have charging, since we'll have other folks coming in. But you'd want to talk to Philip Jimenez of Shafter Parks and Rec on where that's going exactly, and maybe that would be a really great place to set something, because that's also by the Tin Cup. I mean, it's in the general facility over there.
Yes,
and then
that. Go
oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Linda.
But I would talk to him, because that is a big project that's coming up. And Ford Theater Tin Cup, that's great, because we get out of town visitors that come in there. And then also if people are charging, that's, you know, they can go in there. Apple Market's also another good one in my opinion, just because it's in the central town. And it's also kind of by the Richland School District. So, you know, I'm not sure about the teachers that come into town, but you've got Richland right there. And the Stringham Park, I think, yeah, that's what they're renovating right now. So that would probably be another one. I'm not quite familiar with this first one you have. Could you explain what that is?
La Villa is the new taco spot that's right when you leave, like AM PM. It's to the right, I believe, of AM PM.
Oh, okay,
So
right on the corner of
it's a new
Lerdo and
location. Yeah,
Central?
that one's actually
Oh,
ranked
okay.
number 1 based off of the accessibility, because it's so centered to both Lerdo and then going on the 43. But to answer your previous question about the rec center, that's a really great suggestion. Philip was at the May meeting, and we did give it a chance to speak with Philip, and we have been in email communications. The only reason why we didn't put it on this list is only because the GSPP window for GSPP 3 will primarily be focused on shovel-ready projects. And we're not sure if the timeline will match up with the funding opportunity for the that we have here in this measure, but we are in communications, and this funding is stackable with city and county funding as well. So that communication is already going, and we can submit more than one application for the city. It doesn't have to be just one primarily location. So that is why the only reason why you don't see that on the list, but that is in the works in the background. So thank you for that, Linda.
Okay. Well,
And I do
there is,
also, go ahead.
So we don't lose that area if the funding, has to be shovel ready. I would highly suggest maybe asking Public Works about this first, but there is a large parking lot that is shared by Public Works and that correctional facility. It's on the east side of it. Maybe we could get charge stations over there because you could walk from there over to the fields. I think it might be a little bit of a walk, but it's still doable, so we don't lose funding for the rec.
Yeah, we are definitely happy to help assist and submit as many applications as we can for this funding for Shafter. So if Linda, I might send you an email, if you could provide me the email of the people that we need to contact, so that way we can have this open communication and get the applications in. Um, because they do fall into a tier system, so just because it doesn't go land on tier 1, which is shovel ready, doesn't necessarily mean it won't get chosen. It just will go into a different tier. And I did also want to mention that on this list is not related to electrical capacity. We are working with our partners with the Center of Sustainable Energy to do a revision of the CARA map that has a layer for electrical capacity. I know with our previous conversations with PG&E, sometimes when a location looks really good because of amenities and it is surrounded by areas that are very busy, that sometimes may mean that there may not be electrical capacity for EVI implementation. So we will have a second list that is ranked based off of electrical capacity feasibility for the sites. And this is not a close list. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica, but if you see a site here that is not taken into consideration, I am happy to also look into that as far as electrical capacity and feasibility.
Oh,
Great.
you
So I
just
see.
got in the chat from Public Works.
Yeah, so there's information in the chat about the contact information. Michelle and Jessica, I see your hands up. I want to ask a clarifying question first. So Brianda, is this a list that there's going to be like a certain number chosen from this list, or this is the list where all of these could theoretically happen?
Theoretically, they could all happen if they all have funding. I believe for the measure itself, I'm not sure how many sites will be chosen. Jessica, I think I'll go ahead and pass that question on to you.
Yes, so we don't have funding for each one of these. Depending on how much funding we leverage from the state, how much funding, say, if this is installed on like city property, how much funding the city can bring to us, that might change that a little bit. I believe in the measure based on wanting to do, we're looking at doing, I'll go find the number officially because I don't want to speak off, but it's sets of 4, I think, typically that happen. And so I think we're trying to do a handful of sets of 4. So maybe up to 16, but it'd be like maybe 4 locations. And that's just based on the funding that's in our SERP, plus the funding we would hope to get. So that could change, and that varies with the different commitments. We did have a very like a walkthrough slide on this when the CCAC folks first presented. I'm going to drop that in the chat, and hopefully that can help clarify.
Great, thank you. So Michelle,
I'm happy to drop. I'm sorry. I am happy to drop the Cali VIP website on the chat as well. So
great, thank you. So Michelle, and then Gus Jr.
I'm looking at the list. Depending on who you're trying to capture for the charging, the 1 through 7 make a lot more sense for businesses around. The 410 cup is pretty far away from anybody. The only people who would charge are people who are going to that actual facility. But at Apple Market, there are neighborhoods. There's more stores, like Steering, if you go to the Sparklet laundromat, it's downtown, so you could walk to Rite Aid while it's charging. You could go to the doctor's office, whereas the last 3, 8, 9, and 10 are far away from pretty much anything unless you're looking for just people who are traveling through.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. I guess, Junior, you had your hand up and now it's down. Are you good or did you have a question?
Yeah, how's it going, everyone? Good evening. I just had kind of a clarifying note from the previous question. I believe that you had, Ann. So the state has, so Cali VIP is a state-funded program, and I think their minimum requirement to pay up to 50% of a project is a minimum of 4 chargers, so 4 DC fast chargers, connectors. And then I think there's a maximum of like several dozen, depending on, some industrial partners that have, shopping centers or distribution centers, whatever. But yeah, so a minimum is 4, right? And then the very unique position that we're in here in Shafter, and the reason why we're having this conversation is not because it's a state-funded project, but because through AB617, Shafter adopted or allotted amount of money for electric vehicle infrastructure. And so the state through Cali VIP has an opportunity to cover up to 50% of a project, and that same project could have additional incentives through the AB617 and Shafter. And so this list here that we have right in front of us is just a list, again, that is put together by the information brought to you by residents of Shafter, by this data, these data informed maps that say where the best place to put it based on amenities, so where people congregate to. And then a special request that we did do to the state was to leverage like either PG&E or Pacific Gas, whoever it is, the utility that provides power to Shafter, to provide electrical capacity information. And so in Northern California, that was very successful because it would like, these La Via to the correctional facility, it would tell us how much electrical capacity these addresses have. And so do they have enough power to maintain 4 DC fast chargers, or do they need upgrades, right? And so if they do need upgrades, then that's additional conversations that we need to have. If they don't need upgrades, then that's where that shovel-ready project concept comes in, right?
But that's super helpful and also helpful. Jessica, you put in about like with the CERT funding, we could fund at this point about 3 locations. So that's kind of what we should have in our head.
Yeah, and maybe just to help us wrap up what next steps, I just appreciate Brianda and Gustavo. They are here to help us prioritize and get things ready so we are successful in getting that extra funding. So even just hearing, I appreciate Cesar helping us. The folks that he is working with right now sound like they like the Apple Market and the laundromat locations. It sounds like we're really coalescing. Obviously, this initial list is from you all to begin with, but we're coalescing around some really common themes. And so I think if I can understand correctly, the next steps, we are wanting to hit this round as soon as, like, we want to submit something as soon as we can. So our CCAC is going to work with the appropriate folks to like assess readiness and make sure that the electrical infrastructure is there. And through that, plus all of your input, we can kind of rise to the top, the priority projects. So what I'm hearing is that it sounds like maybe they're coalescing regardless, but there might be a priority project we have that's not like the top tier. So it might not necessarily be that good fit. That, again, doesn't mean we can't still fund it through other means. It just means that for this marriage of the 2 types of funding, we want to find those like best projects. So I'm seeing a lot of good kind of like input about the different locations. And so I just appreciate the discussion. So I just wanted to keep us going. We can keep talking, but I just wanted to summarize what I hear so far.
Yeah. And Cesar, you have a question. You have your hand raised. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. I think just a little clarifying question on the funding. I think you mentioned that, I'm not sure if it was that we have funding for 3 chargers or 3 sites. And also something that Gus mentioned that I think to qualify for this, it's a minimum of 4 chargers. So is this like an attempt to try to unify those funds to reach that 4 charger threshold? Or is that just like one of the pathways forward?
Right. That was a little confusing on my part. Sorry. I put it in the chat, but maybe I'll explain it a little bit better. And I can bring, I think we did have a graphic on this. I'm just struggling a little bit to find it. I did drop in the chat, but I don't want to confuse folks. So I'll just explain it. We have enough funding for 12 chargers, actually. In groups of 4, we think that's about 3 locations. So if you essentially, if we're applying for like, say 3 different locations, and each location has to have a minimum of 4, if we have about 12, so just 12 in 4 groups of 4 is 3 locations. So I hope, sorry, that was confusing. 12 chargers in total would be
At 3 different locations. Each location would have 4.
Each location would have 4.
I feel like this is one of those math problems where it's like there's 3 stations and 4 chargers and how many stations?
I love that. Yeah. So we do have enough funding for about 12. Now, does it have to be 3 locations? No. Maybe we find that it makes better sense to have one location that has maybe 8 and one location that has 4, or maybe it's one location has 6 and 6. I heard it was a minimum of 4 per project, right? So it's possible that we maybe find just 2 perfect spots. They just have to have a minimum of 4. So we think maybe 3 locations. It sounds like probably not more than that, right? Because we don't have enough funding for another set of 4, at least through the CERT funding.
So I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Jessica, or for CCAC. Is there anything that you need from the CSC members right now to do your all's next steps?
Yes. So the reason why we're presenting this list is because it was brought up by the residents and thought leaders.
Sorry, you're like going in and out of your volume. Can you like?
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm saying the list presented here was put together by again by this data map and then feedback from residents. And if say hypothetically La Villa, which is a Mexican restaurant, moves forward for an application, and they do say get into the final funding of Cali VAP, then if they do get allotment for AB617 shafter money through this project, it would need to be approved by the committee, right? And so that's the reason we're having the discussion here. So if there is anyone that knows any business owners, folks at the city level, if they're thinking of an application, then our organization, Asthma Collaborative, is meant to be a technical assistance provider. And so if anyone is interested in going after application, knows business owners that are going after applications or that would be interested in more information, we would love to connect them directly to like the people that actually fill out the applications for them, right? Or help business owners and governmental agencies fill out applications. So if anyone is interested, the support we would need is if anyone is interested or knows of local businesses, shops, restaurants, that are interested in this, let us know either through Jessica and the Air District or directly through Brianda and myself, and we'll be more than happy to connect them and assist them throughout this whole kind of journey. Just lastly, the window for this application is a 45-day window, and it opens sometime in the spring. We don't know yet, but sometime in the spring, March, April, it will open. As soon as we find out when it will open, we will come back to the committee in the Air District and announce it. That way, folks that know, business partners and agencies, that way they're aware of the timeline as well.
Jessica, I see you have your hand up.
I was just going to say so it sounds like we are asking the CSC for contacts, especially now that we've narrowed the list down. I think we're at a point, I hope, that we're talking about narrowing and prioritizing the list. Of course, if new locations come up and they make more sense, that's great. but we want to kind of, I think, narrow, prioritize, and then to Gus's point, just get support to move forward. That's at the point where we're at, because it does sound like we're gonna have to talk. If it's possible that if it's a private place, even if they know that there's all this funding, they might not be interested in doing it. So there is, we have to have a layer of like, okay, next one down, like hitting all of the different sources. So I think as many contacts and support. It sounds like we have a lot of the folks we need to contact, but if you had more, let us know, or let CCAC know.
Great. So Michelle, I see you have your hand up, but before that, just want to say that if people have contacts for any of these that they want to share, should they share that with the Air District, or with whom should they share those?
I wonder if we follow up with an email, if that makes the most sense, Brandon and Gus, that has like your contact information.
Yeah.
That way we all get it.
Yeah, and we could have, as to be organized, or in an attempt to be organized, we could have the Air District be the recipients of those, and then we enjoy working with the Air District, so we could, check in with Jessica and see if anyone has any follow-up.
Great. That'll be the action item for that. And Michelle, I see you have your hand up.
That was just what I was gonna suggest, a contact, because I don't know if I could really truly explain this to the one contact I know on the list. So if there's somewhere I could at least start the ball rolling, and then give them the number or a website or a page to call to or something, that would be great.
Great. Thank you. This is super helpful. Other questions about, let's see, there's a question. Linda, you had a question in the chat. I'm not totally following your question in the chat, Linda. Do you mind? Can you unmute and maybe ask your question?
Which question? I've asked quite a few.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the one about, do we know if more residents need this? That one.
Well, so there was a comment made earlier about having it by residents, which I get if it's a supercharger, but if the residents had this, wouldn't they charge it home? And I was wondering if you guys had any data on EV cars in general in Shafter, if it is coming from residents or from folks commuting in, either teachers that commute in, where we need to have it more by the schools or to certain businesses that might need them, or if we can have more of an access to people traveling through. Like, is it better to have it over by, say, 99 or on Lerdo at Tin Cup? I was just wondering if you had any data.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for the question, Linda. A great question. The beautiful thing about this is, like, this project is meant for like level 3 chargers, so like more superchargers, so like chargers that charge your car, in 30 minutes or so. Level 2 chargers is something that, folks now are starting to build into their houses for their electric and hybrid vehicles. And there's other incentives that are available for that as well. But yeah, these are more for like industrial sites, for public libraries, more accessible for like high traffic areas. For the data on sales, I personally don't have that, but we do have an EV equity team here at our organization that deals and goes through a lot of EV data. So if you guys would like to, we would love to put something together real quick that, and just send it out as notes for everyone, that shows, like the concentration of EVs, the sales of EVs. I believe they could get granular up into the county level, but maybe city as well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, Linda, I can ask my EV equity team to see what kind of data they already have, and then we can share that with you all.
Okay, I appreciate it, Gus. If you have funding available for the level 2 for residents, is that going to be available to Shafter residents? And maybe through this group, could we get that out to those folks? And then, since this is for more supercharger, to have it, another place I just thought of too is the Shafter Learning Center, because that's right by Richland Junior High, and that's sort of a center of town too, if you want to work with City of Shafter.
definitely. And excuses if we didn't emphasize, like, yeah, so these chargers are meant for more, strip malls and restaurants and like more commercial lots. But there is incentives that are coming down the line, and that are already available, matter of fact, for level 2 chargers. So these are chargers that, a good couple hours and you have, a good solid charge in your vehicle, or just overnight charging as well. There's actually there's a lot up in the air, but there's a potential for a pilot program to um, to be rolled out in the San Joaquin Valley, and we're keeping a close eye on it. That actually will incentivize people that already have EVs or are interested in EVs to install level 2 chargers, like totally for free inside people's homes. And so that means the installation and everything. It's a pilot that is also through the California Energy Commission. We're keeping, like I said, we're keeping a close eye on it. Brianna has been very close in the loop on that. As soon as that becomes a reality, and like again, it's for the Central Valley, we would come right back to this committee and announce it, and then anything that we could do to help bridge those connections, we would love to do that.
Okay, thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
that would be great for our residents.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. Thank you. So it sounds like you should all be getting an email about any next steps that you have for outreach to these potential locations, and then CCAC and the Air District will come back to this group with if they have more questions or need more information, and then also in the future, if there's different kinds of charging stations that are available or different kinds of funding for charging that's available. So great. So I'm gonna move us along to our standing updates. Thank you, Brianna, and your internet was great. No weirdness, and you could even stay on camera, so we got to see you the whole time. So thank you.
Thank you.
So now's the time where we get updates from the various agencies that are with us in our meeting today. Again, feel free to ask questions in the chat or raise your hand. So I think that we're gonna start with the update from Michelle from CARB, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't have any updates to share today.
Cool. Well, yeah, well, thank you for being with us anyway.
Yeah.
So I think this is like a Michelle update session. So I think Michelle from the Air District has an outreach update.
Hi guys. Yeah, I have an update and I have a few slides, so I'm going to share my screen. One second. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes, healthy air living for kids. Is that what?
Yes.
Awesome.
So this is just going to be a really quick update. Again, my name is Michelle Rivera. I am part of the outreach and communication team for the Valley Air District. Today, we're going to just be providing the quick update on our outreach efforts here in Shafter. So in January, Air District staff distributed Healthy Air Living Kids calendars, and these were distributed to schools and during our air purifier distribution events. This calendar is part of an annual contest for students who are artists, and these students are usually in kindergarten through the 12th grade. If you know a teacher, please encourage them to have their students enter the contest. Or if you know any children who love to draw, paint, or do like digital art, please also encourage them to enter the contest. More details is available on our webpage that's listed on the screen here. Calendars were also mailed out to CSC members. If you would like to request additional calendars, just be sure to speak to Rocio or anybody from our team here. Here we have our school outreach that was done as well. Air District staff continues to share information about our Healthy Air Living Schools program. And we do this to all Shafter schools, and we make sure that we make no idling signs available. So if you know of any schools that need these signage, please let us know as well. We'd be happy to drive out there and drop them off or drop off any additional outreach materials. Last time we met, we talked about some of the distribution events that we were going to be having for air purifiers. So these are just some of the events that took place in January. A little bit about these. The first event that we had was on January 11th. This was at the Shafter Family Resource Center. We distributed a total of 50 purifiers that day, and a total of 72 purifiers, and 50 families got to take home their purifier, and additional 22 were helped that day, and they will be getting their purifier in the mail. The second event that we had in January was on January 25th. And this was during another food distribution. And this event was in partnership with Capkin Jesus Saves International Church. This day we distributed a total of 89 purifiers, and they all went home that same day with the residents. So I know you guys asked last time for an update on total number of purifiers that have been distributed. So that is a total of 960 that have gone out to residents in Shafter. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, that's my update.
Thank you. We have a couple thank yous in the chats. So that's great. And I think the next update is by Jimmy from DPR, from the Department of Pesticide Regulation.
Hello, everyone. I have 3 updates today. So during the last Shafter CSC meeting, community members asked for DPR for an update on Shafter monitoring. We will provide that monitoring update in April. The second update is that during the next Arvin Lamont Pesticide Subcommittee meeting at the end of March, we will be providing a summary on the 13D residential bystander regulation. It is my understanding that the Air District will invite the Shafter community members to that meeting as well. So people will come and learn about the 13D residential bystander regulation. Third update is regarding our CASPIR mobile application. So this application has been discontinued. Over the last several years, we have not seen the adoption and usage that was anticipated. In addition, our mobile technology partner is unable to support the system updates. However, DPR has methods to contact the county ag commissioner to report a pesticide-related incident, illness, or concern. I'll be posting in the chat links where you can report any pesticide-related incidents, illnesses, or concerns. That was pretty much all my updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy, and thanks for the follow-ups from past meetings. Any questions for either Michelle or Jimmy? All right, so before we move on to the wrap up, just following up with something that came up earlier in the meeting about the Air District's one pager about vegetative barriers. And so looking at the squares for Jessica and Rocio, I think we probably don't have time to do that today, but if it's a quick thing and you want to do it today, otherwise we could email it. What are your thoughts?
Maybe we can quickly tee it up today if we have a little bit of time. Rosie, are you down with that?
Yeah, I feel like I can possibly get through it's a 1-page fact sheet, so it shouldn't take too long.
Sure, it's 1 page.
Let me go for it. You share my screen. Okay, so as you all know, this is from a requested action item from the last CSC meeting. And essentially, this just highlights the key points to the vegetative barriers measure. And so we plan to use this as a tool when doing outreach for folks who are interested in participating in this program. And so I'll just briefly go over this. And I'm happy to take any feedback or thoughts at the end if time permits, or you can feel free to reach out to me after the meeting. So starting off, it states what the vegetative barriers is. And so this is just composed of one or more rows of trees or shrubs that are planted strategically near areas of concern to block pollution, dust, chemicals, or odor to improve air quality. It states the purpose of this program, which is to install vegetative barriers in your community. And this is to improve the air quality, and this can also like block any dust. States who is eligible to participate. So these grants can be awarded to a city, county, special district, nonprofit, tribal government, or public agency for projects to be, projects to be implemented within the community. Let me scroll down on the Spanish side as well. And so just high level 2 general requirements, which is the first one, we need permission to plant on the property. And also the person who participates must maintain the vegetative barriers for up to 10 years, which is listed on the contract period. And so this funding will cover up to 100% of the eligible costs. And this includes the study, any supplies and materials that are needed, the construction, and then of course, contracted services to install those vegetative barriers. And a few of the benefits to this measure is it uses natural solutions to mitigate air quality impacts and improve public health. And this will it can also reduce near road air pollution. And due to the trees or shrubs that are used, it can reduce heat. And of course, it does improve the aesthetics in the community. And that was all. And
Right,
again,
so-
like I said,
No, go on, go on.
I was going to reiterate the purpose to just inform folks what a vegetative barriers is and how they can be a part of your program. And so I'm happy to take any feedback after this meeting.
And Linda wants to know if folks can apply for this now or what's the timing on this participation?
I can help answer that. So we're really excited to make sure folks know the difference. So vegetative barriers are like the bigger projects, and absolutely is the answer. We do have funding still left in that measure for folks to apply to. As a reminder, we do have a few like private entity, Wonderful Company has a couple of locations that they're going to plant barriers to block pollution from some of their sites. But there is still a significant chunk of the funding available if other growers or folks want to plant. So Bianca, you've heard her say it several times, and she's just been a great advocate for you all, has asked us if we plan to continue to work with folks like the Ag Commissioner or the farmers or growers in the area. And the answer is yes, to continue to reach out to folks to participate. But Linda, if you know anyone or you want to help us do the outreach, or you want to be that voice for us, or even just send contact information to us, we're happy to keep doing that outreach. We have from you all lots of locations of places where you all want these types of barriers planted. We hope this one pager helps get folks a little more interested in being a part of it. So I think that's the goal with this, is folks might just have a better idea of what they're getting into with a quick little sheet rather than like a big RFP to respond to.
So this is intended for people who want to actually like host the vegetative barriers.
Yeah, to like let folks know how like what it means to even install that. Exactly.
Got it. Great. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to move us along to the wrap-up part with some exciting news that Jessica already shared, and now I can't talk and like share my screen at the same time. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So this is the final part, talking about wrapping up for this meeting and talking about our next meeting. And the exciting thing that Jessica mentioned earlier, and we've talked about, I think, for a couple months now, is that our next meeting on March 11th will be in person. I feel like we should have like confetti or some like, trumpet noise or something. So it's on Monday, March 11th, which is the regular day that our meeting would be normally. And it's going to be in person. And yes, it's going to be at the Shafter Ford Theater, and there'll be more information and stuff coming about that. Before then, we have our agenda setting meeting, as we do every month. Usually the agenda setting meetings are on the Monday after our CSC meetings. For this month, it's going to be on Tuesday. So Tuesday, February 20th, because Monday, February 19th is a holiday. So Tuesday, February 20th at 4 p.m. via Zoom is our agenda setting meeting. And like you saw today, there's a lot of things that come up in those meetings that we bring to the CSC meetings. So please come if you can. If you can't come but have agenda items that you would like to share, feel free to share them with the Air District or with your Harder & Company facilitators, and all of our contact information is at the bottom of this slide. And we're happy to bring those to the agenda setting meetings. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it to Vanessa to talk about some of the action items from our meeting tonight.
Thank you, Diana. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you all can see the action items that we have for today. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, and as she's setting that up, just want to remind you that we're taking the action items in real time. So we want to do this, sharing them with you to make sure that if this is an action item that you brought up, that we're understanding what you said, that we're getting it right, and that we didn't miss something that you wanted as an action item. So go for it, Vanessa.
Thank you for the reminder, Diana. So we have several action items today. The first is for a future meeting / in-person meeting in March. There will be a walkthrough of the AQ View map tool, and the parties responsible are the Air District and H&Co. For the second item, the Air District will check in with the CSC about bike lane proposal at the March CSC meeting, and that will be on the Air District to do. Item 3, CCAC will follow up with Public Works to assess readiness of and submit proposal to include area between correctional facility and Public Works as a potential EV charging location. Item 4, the Air District will follow up with CSC via email to request feedback on additional potential EV charging locations. And lastly, number 5, the Air District's one-pager on vegetative barriers will be shared at a later time or at a future meeting.
And that one, I think we did. I added that one. I thought we weren't going to have time, but I think, Rocio, do you need any other action with that? Or are we good with number 5?
We are good with that. I'm just happy to take
Okay.
any suggestions or feedback.
Cool. See, we already did one of the action items. Woohoo!
Amazing. Look at us being productive already.
I know.
Okay, then, so I will go ahead and remove this item. Now that you've all have seen and heard the other items, wondering if there are any questions or comments about these. Do we need to have any modifications for any of the existing action items, or are there any missing action items that we're missing that I can include to the list?
Not seeing anything in the chat or any hands raised, Vanessa.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks everyone. In that case, I'm going to pass it back to Diana to close the meeting.
Great, and I'm going to share my screen. Oh, share my screen again. Oh, wait. Okay. Yeah, so thanks. This is the very end of our meeting, and thank you for sticking around. We had a lot of good stuff that we talked about today. So now we'd like to open the floor to anyone who would like to make any final comments, or anybody from the public who would like to make a comment or ask any questions. If you would like to make a comment, the instructions are on this slide, either for doing it via Zoom or from your phone. And also at this time, I want to remind Jessica to please check the YouTube Live to see if there's any comments there.
I can confirm that there aren't any comments on YouTube.
Great. Any members from the public who would like to comment? I'll give it a minute. So I don't see any members of the public or any comments or hands raised or anything, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah, and pass it to Jessica to make any final remarks before we close our meeting.
I just want to, there were so many presenters today, so thank you all who presented and who helped us with this meeting. I think it always goes better when we all collaborate, and I think collaboration was on display, so thank you. And definitely thank you all for your input and your guidance and feedback. We look forward to seeing you in person in March. It should be a really good time, and definitely look out for the follow-up emails and helping prepare for that. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Yeah, have a great night, and we'll see you all in person next month, and hopefully at the agenda setting meeting next Tuesday. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.